everybody, and welcome to another tutorial on Organian's puzzle box. In today's tutorial, we're not gonna go to space. We're actually gonna sit right here on planet Earth, creating some rocks or some cliffs, whatever you want to call them. This tutorial is intended for beginners to intermediate level, for people who don't know what type of tools they need to use in order to create environments in Unreal Engine. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Unreal Engine's modeling tools. They're quite basic, but they get the job done in terms of putting together, blocking out the scene, the environment, and so on. I'm trying to show you that they actually can be pushed a bit further, and you can create assets within Unreal Engine. You don't have to go in any other software whatsoever. You don't need Blender, 3ds Max, Maya, nothing, Substance Painter, nothing like. You don't need any of that. All you need is Unreal Engine 5, and that's pretty much it. You use Quixel Bridge for your textures, and you use Unreal Engine itself to build meshes that you can then expand upon and reiterate and just use them in multiple combinations in order to create a level. There are some advantages and disadvantages to this. This is definitely a hacky trick of doing things, and it's not intended for necessarily for production. For producing a video game where you're trying to minimize disk space and you're trying to make it as optimized as possible. This is mainly for visualization, for building environments, again for cinematics and so on. I think it works quite great in doing that. I'm just going to show you my workflow. It's not perfect, but I think it really gets the job done in a timely manner. Now, if you guys want to support the channel, please consider subscribing to YouTube, going on my ArtStation or Gumroad page, and having a look at my space-related projects, which I have on sale. They only cost the price of a coffee, so if you guys want to buy me a coffee, just feel free to go in and purchase one of my projects. You can also become a member on YouTube, and you get access to all of my Unreal Engine projects for one monthly fee. Or you can become a Patreon subscriber. Again, you will get access to all my Patreon projects, to all my Unreal projects, to all the space scenes that I've got. So it's really up to you if you want to support the channel or not. But if not, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and find something useful in here. So let's not waste any more time, and let's begin. So I've opened a basic scene in Unreal Engine. Nothing fancy about it. It's just a default map. What we want to do is, it doesn't matter if you're on Unreal Engine 5 or 4, this works in both. 4.27, I would say, not any earlier than that. Just make sure you first go into your edit plugins and type in here modeling, and this will bring up these three options. Make sure you've got both of these selected and then restart the engine in order to get the modeling tool editor in Unreal Engine. Once that's done and you restarted the engine, you will have this option over here where it says a modeling. So if you press that option, it will open a new panel. In this panel, you can create basic shapes, which are the foundation for any world building or anything like that in Unreal Engine, or really in any software where you're trying to do that. This is what you're using to do blocking quite easily. Now, what you want to do, sorry about that, let me just put this phone on silence. So what you want to do is you want to press the box button, for example, and this will allow you to drop a box anywhere in the world you want. Now, you'll notice there are some options over here that we don't actually need to tamper with if we just want a normal, simple box shape. But there are options in here to subdivide it further, make it, make the shape different. Maybe you want a rectangular shape, maybe, so for example, maybe you want to do something like that. What's good about this, if you change the shape right here, the UV map will also be changed as well at the same time, which is really neat. You can also, as I said, subdivisions, you can have how the polygroups are being generated, and we'll just leave them by face. And there's some other options in here that, you can add a material already to it if you want. You can align the normals. I mean, I would always leave that on. But yeah, if we press complete right now, this will generate this object. But if we just left click, it will also drop it within the scene. And we can press complete, or we can add another one if we want to. Now, with that added, what you'll notice in the content browser is that a new folder has been generated, called literally generated. if you enter it, you will find your mesh that you've generated. So let's just rename that to maybe SM uh, rock, okay? And this has not actually renamed it within your world, but that's fine. Since I have another box somewhere in here. Anyway, that's fine. You can just rename it if you want to SM rock as well. So that's our rock over there. That's our mesh. Okay, and we still have the modeling tools over here, and they're very, a lot of them do uh, basically what other modeling tools do in normal in any other software. They do they're very specifically selected to give you all the options that you need to be able to model this quite like in any other software. And now that got we've got the box open, we can look at it, and we're thinking, right, how should our rock look like? Now this is important because really depends on what you're trying to achieve here, but let's just assume that this is going to be some form of a part of a cliff or something like that. So what I would want to do first is you can go into the dynamic mesh sculpt, which is under the deform tab. You've got some other options in here as well, but this will allow you to pretty much sculpt. Now, as you're doing this, you're noticing some, awkward sort of, ripping and tearing around here. And this is because our model has only got, a few sides, it's got, well, we've got six sides. So that's about it, really. Six polygons, which I believe they're cut in, like in triangles. But what we want to do first is we want to remesh it. So press remesh, maybe take it to something like 1,000. That should be okay. And just press accept. And now the model has been remeshed into 1,000. Well, actually, it says here it's got. You can see it over here. How many edges it's got, how many vertices it's got, so and how many triangles it's got. Right. So now you can see that. Now, if we go back into our sculpt, you'll notice that if we try and sculpt now, there is no longer that issue that we had previously. Also, we've got the move option selected. So right now what it's doing is just pulling polygons and just moving them around. So if you press shift and left click at the same time, it will smooth out the area. Now, don't be alarmed if it's not actually smoothing it in the sense of how you're used to in your own software like Blender, where smoothing really makes the faces and the normals blend together properly and so on. That's not a problem here. You'll notice what I mean once we're done with just doing the basic shape of what we want to do. So this is quite useful for things like blocking. Smoothing, as in shift and left clicking here, is really useful to get rid of any sort of unwanted hard edges that might sort of come through onto your finished product. So we're just doing that, just doing some basic shapes. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm just gonna press accept. There's obviously a lot of options in here that you can go through and experiment with, but I'm just gonna press accept, and this is our new sort of mesh. Now, in the generated content in here, you'll see that the cube has now been, well, the rectangle, the shape that we created to begin with has now been replaced by this new one. But the UVs, if we go, because it was UV properly to begin with, if we go down here to UVs and we press the unwrap, you'll notice that the UVs are now stretched and so on. They were quite nice to begin with, but now they look quite horrible. So you can press the auto UV unwrap if you want. You can also, obviously, in here, unwrap it on your own, depending on what sort of, if your texture resolution, what sort of texture resolution you're aiming for. This is going to unwrap it and use the seams that you already have. So if we actually press the seam editor, you can see where the seams are currently. So it will just simply try and follow that if you just press unwrap. Okay, but if you want, you can add new seams. I'm not really sure how you can delete the seams, but I'm not really sure how that really functions apart from using auto unwrap and using initial patches to something like 1, and then with that you accept, and from there you start building new seams. That's how I've done it in the past, but let's just cancel that. What we're going to use, we're going to use auto UV, and we're probably going to go for something like 10 patches. Let's see, Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's still a bit stretchy. I am trying to get a 2K resolution. Let me just try and get 20 patches. Let's see if that balances it. Sorry, a bit more. I think it sort of does, but not as much as I would like to. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be changing much. There's only so many ways that it can actually unwrap this. Okay, now if we increase the, we can see that we're gonna have a bit of stretching over here, but it shouldn't be the end of the world, really. I mean, this is on autopilot, really. So once we press accept, the mesh has now been unwrapped in that sort of respect. It's got that UV now. Now, what we want to do, we can start sort of deforming this by using texture maps, which just makes things a lot faster than just manually sculpting it. So we're going to bring in Quixel Bridge. Sorry, I managed to move the window. So in Quixel Bridge, keep dragging it into the scene, and I'm trying not to. You can find whatever texture you want in here. So, for example, I had this mine rock wall, which I've taken the highest quality. I've just added it to my project. Let me just then put Quixel Bridge away. If I go into content browser, which I'm trying to find, there we go. In my mega scan, so in the content folder, there's this once you add a mega scan. So once you've gone over here, press the Quixel Bridge, search for whatever asset you wanted, and then chose the whatever quality level, download, and then add it. It will add it to the project that you have opened Quixel Bridge through. Once you do that, then a folder will appear called Megascans and Megascan presets. What you're interested in is this folder. So you double click it, you go into surfaces, and then your texture will be in here. So for this particular case, it's mine rock wall. Now, if we take that texture and drop it over here, this will add the texture on top of the mesh that we generated. And you can see where the seam is coming through. You can see how it's just creating that sort of, you know, hard edge there, which is not really nice, but it is what it is. We're going to fix that later on. Okay, so we've got this. This is how it looks like with the material from Quixel. And actually, if we double click the material from Quixel, this is what that material sort of looks like. Not the material instance, but the material itself. So it's a very simple setup in the sense of everything is driven by the adjustments in the tiling material function, which are, quite complex in their own right. But we don't need to mess with any of this, right? We're just using it the way it is for now, and we're going to make our own variant of this that will use triplanar. Okay, so this is the material that we've added. It's all nice, I guess, but as I said, if you are happy with how this looks right now, that's good for you. But we can deform this. So if we press the button, where is it now? So it's called. I always forget it. Right, this displays button. So you've been silent. What? Anyway, so we've got the displays over here. If we press the displays button, you'll notice that it's now displays the mesh using a Perlin noise, but that's not what we want. So we're going to click that button and select the texture 2D map. Okay. And with that selected, we've got a displacement map slot in here that we can add. And if we go back into the content browser, this is where we've downloaded that material from Quixel, and we've got 3 textures. Now you want to drop in this texture, which has occlusion in it, has roughness in it, and it's got the metallic in it as well. Sorry, displacement in it as well. So what we want to do is you want to drag this material and put it over into here, and this will make your mesh be, as I said, changed based on that. Now it's using the red channel. If we double click this texture and open it, and we have a look into the red channel, so that's RGB. You can see that it's black and white, but it's very harsh, which is generating this harsh geometry. Now, if we go for the green channel, this is too washed out and not a lot of deformation will happen. And if you use the blue channel, this looks about right, okay? So what we want to do now is we want to switch this from red, green, blue to blue. And that will use the blue channel. And you're noticing most likely some issues already where here, you've got some issues and then not a lot of, not a lot of stuff going on here. Maybe we just want to put it maybe at around 5 in terms of its displacement. Or maybe you want to go higher, 20. 20 is nice because it does displace it around here, which looks quite good, but it also creates this artifacting around here, which I'm not really happy about. Now you've got some UV scales, so you can play with the scales if you want to. Normally I keep this at 0.2, and you can see that just adds more height, but it's also creating a lot of artifacting. So maybe let's just Control Z, go back. Oh, sorry, Control Z has completely removed the displacement. So just go 0.5. Make sure this is using the blue channel. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened here. Let me just cancel, and there's no displacement added, so let me just go back to normal settings. 10 in here. I'm not really sure what's happened. So I am using the blue channel, not the red channel. Yeah, there we go. Now it's okay. One thing to note as well, by the way, if you've opened the texture and you've deactivated RGB and saved, then you won't be able to use the other. I don't think it will be able to read the other channels if you do that. So make sure you've got RGB on. Okay, so we've added this. I think we're probably gonna have to go for like 20 or something like that to give it a bit more, a better shape. Now, one thing to note is that we want to cancel at the minute because we haven't really tessellated this mesh enough to support that geometry as much as we want to. So we can go back into our remesh button in here and then increase the target to something like 100,000. Now, this is where things like Nanite comes into play. So we're just increasing the geometry to 100,000. If the accept button isn't blue here, that means that the geometry hasn't yet finished processing. That's why you can't accept it. But once that's done, you can press the accept button, and now you can go into your displays again and have a look at how that has changed. Now, if we would do I don't know what, oh, look at that, I've also had a crash. I'll just restart the engine. I don't know why that happened, but it is what it is. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. I just needed to redo the mesh very quickly because I didn't save. So always remember to save because Unreal Engine can crash randomly, So let me just quickly go back in here and do a remesh. And again, I just want to do 100,000. And I should be able to press the accept button, which is great. And now go back into displays. Make sure we're texture to the map. Drag in the map that we want to use and then make sure we put that over to the blue channel. Once that's done, we can have a look at the intensity. So because as I said, I'm using now a lot more geometry. This is how the mesh will look like. And this is, you're seeing these sort of areas here where there's this weird stretching. You can't really get away from that whenever you have seams. So that's why it's important that when you actually, unwrap the mesh, you have as little seams as possible. So I'm just going to cancel this and I'm going to go back into auto UV and then decrease the initial patches to maybe like 10 and see if that will give me a better result. But I am losing on texture quality here by doing this, unfortunately. Now, I'm just going to go back into the displays. Hopefully, we'll remember all the settings that I've done. If not, we're just going to have to... Yeah, it doesn't. This is a pain, the fact that it doesn't remember the settings. But I think moving from green to red to blue pretty much fixes the issue. So I've just moved over to blue and I'm still getting some of that, some of that stretching, unfortunately, wherever I've got seams. But I'll show you guys what we can do to try and fix that. So we've got displacement in here. Let's just try and bring this up to about 15 and maybe even more, maybe 20 or something like that. Okay. So I've got that, trying to get as much displacement as possible for that crunchier look. And I'm just going to press accept. And this will save what we've just done. And it might take a bit of time depending on your computer. Depends on how much it will sort of sit there. I guess thinking about it. Okay, so now this is done. So what we can do is we can try and use smooth. And smooth should normally sort of fix some of these areas, but it's also affecting the rest, unfortunately. So that's a bit of a pain. We can try with a fast implicit, but again, it won't, it will sort of try and fix this, but it will also affect the rest of the geometry. So might as well press cancel there. Instead, we can go to our deform again, sculpt. So by the way, this, as you can probably notice right now, these rocks do need a bit of work on them. But if you go in here and you try and smooth some of these areas out, so I'm just trying to smooth, although with not a lot of success. I'm just trying to smooth some of these. Maybe try and increase the strength of the brush and just get some of this smoothness done to try and reduce that sort of stretching around those points. So it really depends on where this is visible. This is why generally these things you want to create them as sort of sets where you can hide some of those issues by just simply smoothing or having another mesh over there. But if we press accept, let's just have a look at what the effect of that looks like. So I've just pressed accept now. Let's just see how that changes. Um, Again, because the mesh now has a lot more polygons, this can take a bit of time. So you could potentially look at fixing some of these issues after you've done another remesh and just try to decrease the amount of polygons. Okay, let's just see. This now should show up with the material. So I'm still not very happy about it. We're just going to keep on going like this for now because there are other solutions to this problem later on. Just bear in mind, the more seams you've got, the more this issue can happen. This is why generally this method works really well when you're doing it just on plain surfaces instead of, areas like this. Right, okay, so now we've got that done. What we want to do is we want to work on the material itself. So the material looks fine, I guess, but some of this can be mitigated with a new type of material, and we can also make our mesh have its textile density a lot more, visually a lot more, not appealing, but more equal. Okay, so let me just try and see if I can bring this mesh a bit higher. If we press the play button right now, this should allow us to be in the world and just be able to see it, see the mesh from a bit closer. I should have probably closed the modeling mode though before pressing play. Anyway, I'm not really sure why this is. Sometimes Unreal Engine does this, where it just takes very long until you can actually go into play mode for some reason. Anyway, this is what this looks like, and I wouldn't say it's too bad considering we haven't really done any sort of manual sculpting or anything like that, but we still have those issues that we need to resolve, right? And I really like how this back turned out, especially if you go around, you can see it. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So let's just lift it up a bit more so we can see where the issues are as well. Right. Okay. Okay. So the material, right? And what we want to do now is we want to open the Omega Scan material and try, and start modifying it. If only Unreal Engine would be responsive. For some reason, it's just decided not to be responsive at the minute. Okay. I'm just going to go back into select mode. This is the material from Unreal Engine. Seriously, everything that I try to open just works incredibly slow right now, and I don't understand why it's doing this to me. Right, okay, so we've got the material in here. This is the material instance. We can go over here and we can open its actual parent material if we want to modify that one. Now, I wouldn't recommend you modify the parent material. I would recommend you make a copy of it, you duplicate this, because if you modify this parent material, any Megascan material that you bring in will default to this parent because that's how Megascans are. If you get one master material from the Megascan library from Quixel Bridge, and that will be the parent for all the, so any other material that you're bringing in is just an instance of the master material with new textures added on. But for this particular case, I'm just going to delete all this stuff. Again, just don't do what I'm doing. You duplicate the material and you edit that one. But as I said, I want to delete all of this. I don't really want it, or I can make a new material. It doesn't matter. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna make a new material just so you guys don't get any sort of bad habits here. So as I said, we don't need a mega scan material. We just need a new one. So in the content browser, I have this called custom triplanar setup. Okay, so actually, let me just right click, create a new material. I'm gonna call it triplanar tutorial. Okay, so I've just created that material. I'm just getting it opened. So let's just bring it over, drag it over here so we can see it quite, you know, in a good way. Um, so we want to start setting up the triplanar sort of setup. The first thing we want to do is want to bring a local position. Okay, and then we want to bring in a multiply. So M on the keyboard, left click, that will bring a multiply. Take the local position excluding the offset and plug it into the A value. And this is really what this is going to work as a sort of the UV tile set, the tile set density. So we're just going to press 1 on the keyboard, left click to add a parameter, plug that into the B value, and change this to maybe 0.1. And you can actually convert the parameter and call it UV tile. Okay, so that's pretty much what that is. It's a UV tile. Now we want to break out float free components. This is gonna give us an RGB, so we can put that into there. Let's just bring this a bit further, and now we want to bring in a make float 2 and duplicate this 3 times by using Control D. And with that done, we are putting the R into X, and then the G into Y, and then this R is going to go into this X, and this G is going to go into this X, while the B is going to go into this Y, and then it's going to go into this Y. So I hope you guys got that, because that's what we need to do, right? That's the setup over there for that. Okay, now the next thing, we can drag these further away, and I'm going to bring in a texture object. Okay, and this texture object can be anything really. You can convert that into a texture set, into a parameter if you want to. So we can, as a convert it to parameter, and just call it. We can call it base color texture, right? So that's the base color texture that we're going to use, and we can just leave it at default for now. It's not really a problem. Okay, now over here, we want to add in a texture sample, and this particular node will link into the texture, while this make float 2 will link into that UV over there. Now we're going to duplicate this, and then we'll duplicate it again. And this texture was going to go into here and into here as well, but then the next floats are going to go into the texture sample, which is going to give us 3 versions of that. Okay, with that done, so this is pretty much the main setup for the blue. Sorry, for the blue, for the albedo, for the base color. Now what we want to do, let's just bring these outwards, and I definitely want to bring these over here because they're we're going to use them for the normal map and other things as well. So I really want to bring them out here like that. Okay, and now we need another node, which is a vertex normal VS. And we want to put that into a transform. One second, transform. You can't select a vector, you can just select transform itself. I want to do it from world space to local space, plug that into there as well, like that. Then bring in an ABS and link it over into here, and then break out float 3 components and connect these two. Now we want to bring in 2 add nodes. Then a parameter, set it to a value of 1. We need that to be done. And then a divide node over here. We select the 1 into the A value. This add goes into the B value of the divide. This add go into the A value, and then the blue channel goes into here. Okay, now the green channel goes into here, and the red channel goes into here. Okay, so that's fine until that point. Now we need to add another multiply here. Add and an add. This is add. I'm adding add by pressing A on the keyboard and left clicking. And we're putting add in here, this one into this multiply, and this divide into this multiply. I need to add another multiply over here, and then with number 3, press on the keyboard, left click to add a color. Push this over to be white. Right click it, convert the parameter, call it hue. If this is just purely if you want to change the hue of your texture. It's a very basic setup for that. Okay, once that's done, we can add into our base color. And now we've got these 2 add nodes in here. So at this point, let me just bring them over here. We want to, oh man, this auto material thing, it's useful, but it's also moving some of this stuff around. I don't really want it to. Okay, so we want 1 multiply, 2 multiplies, 3 multiplies. Okay, and with these 3 added in, the third one goes into this add over here. This one needs to be above like that. Okay, and then we just see for the first multiply, you want to add this color, then the second one you want to add this color, and then the third one you want to add this color. Now into here, you want to connect this multiply into this add node. Sorry, you want to into this, yeah, and then this multiply, the second one into this add node. Okay. Now in every one of these multiplies, you want to bring a section of the RGB that we've just done in here. So we can, oh, and that wasn't good. Oh, okay, so that's a control Z, that's fine, that's good. It's good that I can just control Z the change that auto arrange node has done. It's a really neat plugin, but it does sort of sometimes becomes a bit frustrating. Okay, so the green channel needs to go into this multiply node. The blue channel needs to go into this multiply, and the red channel needs to go into this multiply. Okay, and that should be the setup for the base color right there. So if you press apply right now, that should sort out our material. I'm just gonna go back into the texture over here. Let me just open the content browser and right click create material instance, and I'm going to drop that in there on top of this rock. Now this rock obviously doesn't have the right textures. If we double click the material instance, we've got a base color texture right here that we can change. So with that done, I'm just going to go into this rock, going to drop this texture in, and that should have already now added the rock material onto here. Okay, now you're seeing it's repeating a lot of times, and that's purely because in the material here we have this density. So let's just bring that out so we can have a look. So if we play with the slider, you will see how this is affecting the texture itself. So if we put that to 0.001, this is very large. bit larger, a bit more. So you want to play around with these sort of settings until you get the desired sort of triplanar effect. And as I said, what triplanar does is it does really work wonders into fixing some of the sort of issues with, as I said, with just how the textures look like. So you do want to play around with this a little bit until you get the right sort of values. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm trying to get a bit of mm, yeah. So see, that's too big now. So this is now too big. Maybe something like that. Yeah, I think that looks, yeah, give or take, it looks okay. Now we don't have a normal as of yet, so in the material in here, what you'd want to do is um, this is going to be, going to be used for all of them. But what you basically want to do is you want to copy. Uh, Stop doing that, please. You want to copy all of this. Well, actually, you want to copy all of this like that. Control C, Control V, and then bring it over here. And all you do at this point is just link everything into the UVs like that, right? And this multiply goes into the normal map, okay? And then this texture, we want to rename to base color. Well, it's not base color anymore. This is going to be normal. And then just click apply. Now in our material instance, we will be able to drop in a normal. And I just did. Okay, that's not looking good. Huh. That's not looking good at all. So let's have a look. Something must be messed up in here that's causing this issue. I will give it a look. If you look closely enough, you'll be able to find the problem. So basically, well, to begin with, I've used 4 here. Let's just delete that, add another one. So with number 3 pressed, make sure the color is white, like I said to you, and right click, convert the parameter, call it hue, drop that into the multiply, and that's one that. Oh, actually, yeah, that's interesting. So it adds an alpha automatically. I didn't know that. Interesting. Right, but this is where the problem is. So you've got to make sure that the sampler type is changed to normal. But if you do that, it will give you an error, as you can see, because it's not changing everything else to a normal. So you've got to make sure that everything in here would be set up to a normal, but it just simply still not work. So, God, honestly, why does it keep doing this to me? But what you want to do basically is actually within the texture in here, drop in that normal texture. And once you do that, it will fix it. So just make sure it's not a base color texture in here, otherwise it won't work. So once you press apply, you'll notice that it's now fixed the issue. Let's just bring the sun a bit higher. Okay, so the triplanar has already done some work even here, right? You remember where we had those issues with the stretching and all that stuff? Well, as you can see, it's not gone, but it's better, right? It's better. See, over here there's a problem. So it's not nice, but here's a solution, and it's not a perfect solution, but this is something that you can do. So obviously, let's just save the scene, and because our cliff is, give or take, done in that respect. It's not done in, as in done, but it's, we've got one step here that will definitely do something good for us. So we can duplicate by Alt left clicking and dragging out. And then just bring in this mesh, maybe make it smaller. So scale it. I'm trying to scale it down, but it keeps scaling up. Okay, something like that. Okay. Now let's just drag it in. By the way, we haven't yet activated Nanite on this mesh, which is just, it's not ideal. We should probably activate Nanite on it to ensure that it's, to get better performance. So what I'm doing literally here is I'm dropping this rock in here. Now you might be thinking, well, that's a stupid idea. That's just gonna take more precious resources. Let's just move this over to one lit. So lit is not really helping me either. But anyway, I'm trying to drag it into the position to cover that area where we got that stretching. Okay, so once that's done, let's just say, you know, give or take, this is now pretty much covering that area, hopefully. You know, I'm just eyeballing it here. I'm hoping it does. So with that done, make sure you've selected this mesh, right? The one that you've added, and then shift select the big one. Go back into your modeling tools, and then you have a new option here available, which is called Mesh Boolean. Press that button, and then this will allow you to boolean the mesh, and it gives you some options in here. You got difference 8 minus 8 a minus b, which is what's literally happening here. It's taking chunks of your mesh, so until you've got to wait until the mesh actually starts to, you know, reappears. If you don't, you can't press accept and you won't be able to see the effect. Actually, I may have done this wrong. Okay, so I have done this wrong. I should have selected the other way around. But if I do difference b minus a, that should swap these around, I'm thinking. So let's just see. That should happen now. Come on. It's still not doing it. Okay, so it must be... Okay, let me just... So I select this mesh first, the big one, and then the small one. And then I'm going to press Mesh Boolean. And hopefully that will be okay now. Just make sure you've got... Yeah, that's fine. So you first have to select the mesh. No, look, I've just changed it, and it's doing it again. So yeah, I need to leave it... So just play around with these settings, but B minus A with the big mesh selected, and then shift selecting the smaller one seems to be doing the trick. So let me just see. Okay, is it doing it? Not really showing me anything. Don't tell me it's taking this long to calculate. This is... Okay. No, it's still not doing it the right way, so I'm sure it must have been A minus B. I am not sure why I'm getting issues with booleans on these meshes, but let's just... I'm just gonna switch around these settings until I get the right one. Okay, so there we go. You can see it. So it was minus, you know, it was A minus B. You had the big mesh selected and then the small one. But as you can see, it's going to leave us with a mesh there. So what I intend to do is scale a bit outwards and then probably a bit downwards as well. Let me just try and bring it further down like that. Because I am trying to get rid of this, and you know, this final stump from here that would remain if we don't do it. You can see how it's going to eat into the mesh, and in theory, it's getting rid of the part of the rock face that we didn't find to be very good. So this is calculating again, and sort of done it. Still not quite. There's still some there, so we might still want to go a bit higher and a bit more in here. Yeah, let's just see. Like that. Maybe a bit like that. So I'm going to just maybe something like that. You know, it's obviously a bit too much. I probably should simplify this mesh a bit more, just make it less pixel, you know, less polygons intensive. Okay, so that's pretty much done now. That's the corner there. You can see we've eaten quite a big chunk of it, and it has created a nicer variety within the rock as well, which I find it to be really, really nice. You know, the idea that we've just created a new sort of rock. Now, if we look into the content browser, let me just bring the content browser over into generated. what you're noticing here as well is that we've got the Boolean mesh, and then we also got the original one. So if I drop that in, that is the mesh without us bullying it. So there's no Boolean on this mesh, and we can just add the, add the material. This is the original. This is the material from Quixel that we've got in here, and this one is using the material that we've created. Now, if I bring this Quixel material on what we've created, you'll see that it looks quite nice as well, and it does fit more. The Quixel material will fit more with the mesh that we've done, because purely because where we've when we deformed it, we did use the same sort of UV tile ratio, but you will get all these issues with that. So that is a bit of a bummer there. So with this material, you don't get that much of an issue with the material. Now, bear in mind that in the material that we've done in the triplanar material, we've only done for the normal and the base color, but we haven't yet done it for we haven't done the same thing for occlusion, roughness, and metallic. It's literally using the same setup. The only thing that it's using the same setup as the base color and all the other ones. You literally copy this, duplicate it, and then connect the necessary joints. But the only thing that you want to do for that is you want to bring at the end, you bring a breakout float free components. You would put the multiply into that, and then actually, you know what? I'm just gonna quickly do it, and then I'll show you guys once the material is done. That's pretty much it now. So we've got the same setup. The only thing that we've done is that we added this breakout float free component, so we can get the R that goes in the ambient occlusion, G that goes into roughness, and B that goes into metallic. So that's pretty much that. And then if we look at the rock itself, it's now got the roughness, occlusion, and metallic into it as well. Okay, and that's what you would do really to fix any of this sort of stretching. You'd literally go and you'd Boolean the effects over, whatever you want. Now, one other thing that I also want to show you before we wrap this up, if I go to the triplanar material, press the browse button, so my content browser takes me there. I obviously got this triplanar instance. I could also right click it and create a new material instance. Okay, so that's the second one. Double click it, and again, we've got these colors. I just need to make sure that this, within the material itself, in here, I can just drop that texture, so it's sort of always that texture. Yeah, let me just find the texture again. There we go. That's not what I want to do. Literally just want to add this texture over here. So I've just added as a default. That texture will just be the default, really, as a starting position. So let me just delete this and create a new material instance. So there we go. We've got a second material instance now. It's got a different tiling as well. So why did I create this? Because if I go into my main here, let's just delete this mesh. We've got this one, right? If I go back into here, I have an option where it says attributes, and I can select the material to assign materials to selected triangles. Before I do that though, I've got to generate new polygroups. So if I press that button, for example, this will now show us how the polygroups are being assigned on the mesh. And we've got some options in here where you can select from UV islands, and this is going to show you how the polygroups are generated right now based on where the UVs are. Okay, so that's fine. But why am I saying this? So let's just say, okay, I am gonna press accept. I want the UV. I want the polygroups to look this way. Okay, so now the engine knows that's how the polygroups are being done. That it's reshaped them to look that way. So we've got polygroups based on where the UVs are. We could have done it based on normals and so on, but I find that doing it at UV island level is one of the best sort of things that you can do. So with that done, nothing's really changed about the mesh, by the way. So right now, With that done, let's just go into the material editor right before Unreal Engine stops saving without me telling it to save. Because this auto save, by the way, it's meaningless because the only thing that it does right now, it just I can restore in case of a crash. Never works. It honestly, it hardly ever works. Right. So I go into material editor in here, and this will open a new panel. This is where I can actually paint at the polygon level. So you could paint right now as a selection where you want to add a new material. But we're not going to do that. We're instead going to switch from brush to it says in here all in group. So I'm just going to left click there, and that has now selected that entire group because I told it to select anything that's within that group, and that's what it's sort of doing. I think I might have selected a bit more, so let me just clear the selection, make sure we don't have the back face on, and then just click uh for 1 second. It's not, I'm trying to by UV island, by material, all in group. Okay, let's just try by UV island. It seems not it's not allowing me to properly select this. So I've just selected this UV island only, this top level here. Okay. And now we've got an option here where it says array. We can add a new material. This is, by the way, how you can add new materials to your mesh. Just gonna drag the new triplanar that we created, and I'm gonna put it there. Now I'm going to make sure that this option here, active material, is changed to 1, which is the new material that we've created. And then I'm going to say assign active material. And once you press that button, the new material has been added on top on the new polygroup that you created. And now you can press accept, and the changes will be set. Your static mesh that you've now got, this rock cliff, has got 2 materials now instead of 1, which I find it to be very neat. But once it saves, I know this workflow seems to be taking a bit of time right now purely because I'm using quite a high poly level mesh, but normally it's not. You're not going to be using this amount of polygons every time. You don't need to. I've sort of I've gone a bit overboard with it, to be honest. So waiting for that static mesh to be generated. Now it's generated. We can go back to into our selection mode. So you're seeing that we've now got a different sort of thing here because the triplanar material that we've got, the second one that we generated. So if we bring it out, have a look at the over here, we've got a UV tile, which is the default 0.1. So if you play with that, you can now have a different sort of UV tiling on top here because of that. But you can also go in here and change the hue. So maybe you want to have a bit of a orangey tint or something like that. So you can do that now, and you've got a different tint of the material at the top compared to the bottom, and you've also got a different tile. Okay, so that's the interesting thing, and this is not the only thing that you can do because you can go onto the materials here, and you can actually drop in there the material that is not, this is the original material. This is the material that came from Quixel directly. So you see, that's also something that you can do. Okay, so you're not limited to just one type of material. But I find it to be quite refreshing that you can do all of this. So now to just quickly set up a scene, a look for the scene, you can just drag these things in like that. I've just added some. Oh, sorry. Let me just do that. Okay, and bring it outwards, something like that. Also, let's just double click the static mesh itself and ensure that we have activated Nanite, which will activate Nanite for any of the static meshes of this type that we've created. And with Nanite added on, that means that we're obviously going to have the performance boost of Nanite. So once that's done, any new copy of this mesh will have Nanite enabled. I think you can enable Nanite throughout this whole process, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It just simply will just use Nanite from that point onwards. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sort of like block the scene up a bit with these rocks, and that will just give you sort of an idea of how what that looks like. So now nanite is enabled. We can go back into main, and these have got nanite enabled with a texture added on as well. So that's pretty much it on that end. So I've just gone about very quickly to put a scene together, and also added ultra dynamic sky just for the sake of it. And if you can see, I've just put these together very quickly just to showcase what it looks like. Let me just try and change the weather to maybe cloudy. So this is what this looks like. Or I can try and do like clear skies. That's what this looks like. Again, for example, this is just repeating itself. I can just do that. Again, obviously some Booleans that would need to be done to be able to fix some of these issues. But we're inside of it right now. We've got Lumen active. You can see how these rocks look like, and we haven't really done anything instead outside the software. And if I change the weather again to a thunderstorm, let's press play. I really love ultra dynamic sky. Can't recommend it enough to people. So you can see what that looks like from the top. Going inside, you can look at the effects. You can see the stones. You can also see, because it's triplanar, you can see the wet sort of surface coming into play here as well, which I find it to be very neat. So it works with the triplanar. It works well with the geometry here, because it's got collisions and so on. So that is already self-generated, give or take, ready to be used, as I've said. So with that in mind, we've pretty much finished the tutorial. So I've shown you guys how to do how to make a triplanar projection map material. I've also shown you how to create a mesh in Unreal Engine, a rock cliff, whatever you want to call it, and then how to boolean it to hide some of its imperfections and other such issues. We haven't left Unreal Engine to do any of this. So if you're impressed with the result, then just by using Unreal Engine, just imagine what you could do when you put more than just half an hour into it. Imagine when you're putting your entire effort into creating a pipeline that really works for you, that you can combine a multitude of different sort of workflows from other projects as well, other software as well. At which point, I believe you will be pretty much unstoppable in creating anything that you can dream of. I mean, I think the 90 days Unreal Engine projects that you've seen on YouTube, most likely, I think that just speaks for themselves of what can be achieved within just within the engine without moving outside of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you want to support me, consider purchasing my project or projects for the price of a coffee, or becoming a subscriber on Patreon. I would like to thank my Patreon followers. They are supporting me every month, and I really appreciate that. And I hope to give them as much content as possible, worthy of their contribution towards this channel. So thank you guys, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Stay safe and keep learning.